Celine, firstly, kia ora, no mai haere mai, and welcome to New Zealand.
Thank you
Your
for having
first
me.
time.
It's the first time. It's so amazing. It's already so beautiful.
Do you have any sort of strong memories or feelings of New Zealand cinema? I mean, is there films that you've seen that have been made in New Zealand that have come across your path over your lifetime?
Well, I think just I have to say it's the Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah, no, bring it on.
Because I feel
we
like
are
that's
Middle Earth.
of course, those movies I grew up with, and then I feel like, and then you learn that those fantastic places that you see, that is like sort of like has a groundwork for fantasy. I think that really, and then I mean, I learned that as a kid. I feel like that's the first time I really thought about New Zealand, because I didn't really know. I was just a kid. So.
Yeah, I get that. Well, welcome, and hopefully you'll have a bit of time in your schedule to go to Hobbiton, maybe.
Oh my God, I kind of want to go. I really want to go. Is it
I
true?
know.
Yeah.
We had Lizzo in for a concert last week,
Oh my
and
God.
she went down to Hobbiton. You can find it on Instagram, and she played the Lord of the Rings theme on her recorder outside the Hobbit house. It was, yeah.
That's magical.
It's kind of magical.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was looking at it. I was like, oh my God, I really want to go. Let's see if I can find time for it while I'm here.
I hope you do, because obviously everyone wants you to talk to us about your simply stunning film, can I say.
Thank you.
It's those moments that culminate in a 2-hour experience inside a cinema that just make your heart sing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for watching the movie. Yeah.
It is one of those stories, obviously, that has quite an autobiographical heart to it, and it's a bit of your story. At what moment did you know that you wanted to create a story, not perhaps a theatre story that you're used to as a playwright, but that you wanted to turn it into something cinematic?
Well, I think that the sort of the starting point of this movie is really the first scene of the film, where I actually found myself sitting in a bar in East Village in New York City between my childhood sweetheart who has come to visit me, and he was a friend, and my husband, who I was living in New York with. And I think that sitting there in between them, there was a part of it where I felt like I was becoming a bit of a bridge or a portal, and also I was the reason why these two people were trying to get to know each other and try to cross language to speak to each other. And I think that really was the inciting event. I think the reason why I wanted it to be a film, though, is because it's a story that spans decades and continents, and I really felt like you want to be able to feel the kind of the epic scale of even our lives, because I feel like that's what the movie's about. It's about the kind of the way that we move through so much time and so many different places, and we cross the Pacific Ocean sometimes.
As you just did, and welcome.
Yeah, I just did.
I love that you said epic, because it had such an intimacy, a gentle intimacy, but within our own lives and our own heart and our loves and our heartache and our loves lost, it is epic within inside us. So is that your use of the word epic is really interesting.
Well, I think that there's a part of it where I feel like we don't really ever think about our own lives as an epic thing, or an everyday life or an ordinary life. We don't really think of those things as a really epic events. But the truth is, I think that it is quite epic, because it is matter of decades, and it's a matter of like you go through wild transformations throughout your lives, and there's a way in which that you may be a person who is like right now we're professional grown-up adults, and then of course I know there is a part of us that we are also 12 too, that we're sitting here too, and I think that's a way in which that I think that we can really think about our lives in a much bigger way, and I think that really was the dream for the movie.
Look, and you're absolutely describing why audiences all over the world have had such strong reactions and connections to this film. I mean, who cares about Rotten Tomatoes? But you're pretty much sitting on 100, I mean, when you see audiences embracing your film, how does it make you feel?
Well, I think just amazing, because of course when you're making the movie, you're really thinking about how this feels to you and feels to the people who's making it with you. So it's a bit of a secret that you have as you're working on it, and you're not totally sure. You hope many things, but you don't totally know if this is something that is going to connect with everyone. And I think that when it does, there's nothing but total joy, because I think that it makes you feel less alone, because so many people are connecting to this story. Even though it is so in some ways so small and so intimate, it's like you just can tell that people are understanding that it's also so big and epic too.
I think you're describing the whole reason why cinema is such a special thing, because plays and theatre are amazing, and I love going to the theatre, but on a global level, if you can take a story like that and take it to so many cultures and so many lives and experiences and have that connectivity, it makes us feel like we are all part of it.
Of course, I feel like for that moment, that in the film, there are just places in New York City that are kind of like, some of them are really big and big tourist locations, and some of them are kind of like really like mundane and like everyday locations that you just, if you live in New York, you might just walk by it. And I think those places, for the 2 hours that you're watching the movie, you're going to get to be there and live there, and those places are going to have meaning to you. And if you do end up going to New York, you're going to know what those city corners are. And even if you don't, it's as though you've already been there. So how amazing is that all over the world you're able to experience what it's like to be in New York or Seoul, in this movie.
Speaking of Seoul and opening the heart of what it feels like to immigrate from your own culture and country into another, I don't think I've experienced getting to know that more intimately than I did with your film. And when we see, as you say, these 3 chapters of her life and your life, but also the connectivity between her language and her culture and changing of her name. Did you find bringing that to the screen was, in a way, a real personal journey and coming to know yourself, I guess, is my long-winded question?
Well, I think that is a part of any kind of a new thing that you experience as well. Because I feel like, yes, absolutely, but I have immigrated twice in my life, and I think that every time that it is something that you're working through. But honestly, to me, and this can apply to the way that this immigration story can apply to everybody's lives, even if you maybe not have as dramatic of an immigration story as Nora, which is that, for me, this was the first time I've made a movie. So in that way, right? So there was an amazing way where I felt like I was becoming someone new as I was doing it. And there was a part of me that didn't know what it was like to make a movie. And then now there is a person who can. And I think that, to me, that is the most personal thing that happened to me as an artist in making this movie. And I think that's true. I think it's like, you can of course be like the way that immigration goes through Nora, or immigration went through for me, is that, we're talking about crossing Pacific Ocean, but it can be as simple as, like, you're moving from like Melbourne to,
or changing
Perth.
From one job to another.
One job to another, and and I think that it's like, I don't know if necessarily have to be something so huge. And sometimes it can be you're leaving a relationship. Right?
Yeah.
You're like, maybe like, well, I was married to this person, I'm no longer. And I think every bit of it, and sometimes as simple as like, well, I used to be 16 and now I'm 60.
Yeah.
Right?
I've always had that notion as a woman, and you go through life in relationships and loves, that there is always a reason, you always come out of it a different person. And it was always been my priority to always take the goodness out of each one. And even the less great stuff always forms you as a human.
Of course.
And you go through. And I saw that in this story.
Yeah.
And I also, more than anything, firstly, a great cinematic device of having, because I do this all the time, and you sit in bars or at traffic lights and you look at a conversation or a dynamic between one person, 2, 3 people, think, oh, I wonder what's going on there and how are they related? And I love that you had that in a kind of observational voiceover right at the very beginning of the film, and it really set it up so perfectly. But without any spoilers, by the time we had lived with each of these characters, I realised the thing I loved more than anything was how fresh it was to have men portrayed almost heroically in that intimacy, that they were adults behaving like adults, not behaving like man babies. And I loved that, and I felt we needed a story like that.
Well, I think that to me that was very much something that I was really interested in depicting, because I feel like sometimes when we talk about masculinity in a way that is a little external, or a little bit of a posturing, or there's a bit of a show of it. And I think that to me, masculinity, and I love masculinity, and it moves me when it takes the shape of something that is internal, where it is about, well, I'm not going to put myself first. or I'm not going to put what I need and my priorities over the person that I love and their priority. And there's a way in which that, like, the strength that they show to me is what I personally love about masculinity. And I think that really was something that I was interested in, and I think that I was interested in it because I also felt like there are men like that who are able to be there for someone, outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that to me it was, it felt like it was a shame that there weren't enough depictions of them. Or even though, yes, and I think without question, what you're saying, the word heroic, I think is absolutely, they're heroes, right?
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to look like, abs and, you know what I mean? It's not that kind of a thing. It can be something that is as simple as like, well, actually they have the sensitivity to know what the person they love needs.
Yeah, and prepared to take risks based on your trust of that love for you.
Of course.
Which not a lot of people do, I guess. Let's talk about the process of making this film, and obviously casting the film is, is one of the big priorities. But honestly, flawless. Greta, I've seen around in various guises and small roles, and she just owns this film. How would you describe your relationship with her and your collaboration?
Well, I think that it is so intimate because I feel like that's just true about any. I feel like that was a relationship I had with all the actors because it's like this movie. The big spectacles are the actors' faces and what they're going through, and the way that they look at each other, the way that they communicate with each other. So to me, it had to be so intimate and so connected. So, and I think that's what it ended up being. You know, I really talk about. So much of casting is actually best way to talk about it is like falling in love. You know, so it's a little bit of like I met Greta over Zoom, and I was like, maybe it's gonna be her. It feels like maybe she's the one. Maybe she's the person who's right for this role. But then you keep talking to see if I'm right. And then I remember leaving that conversation being like, no, she's Nora. You know. But there's no. I couldn't talk about it as something that is like technical or something that is scientific or something.
No,
it's so
innate.
It's so a feeling. You know, it's so instinctive and very like. I just have a feeling, you know, which I think is how you would describe someone that you'll fall in love with. You're like, you can't really talk about, you can talk about all the things that person is. And of course, in the case of Greta, it's like she's an amazing actress. She's so funny. She's so, all these things. But beyond that, it just is a gut feeling you have.
Wow, you sound like someone that really trusts those gut feelings.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because that's the only thing you can really go by, in a way. Yeah. There's nothing else that could push you through, you know.
Would you then describe the act of having that feeling when you're casting someone in a way to play a version of your own personal life story?
Well, I think that in actually turning that subjective experience of sitting in that bar with my child sweetheart and my husband, and then you kind of have to go through an objectification process of turning it into a script. Right? Which is like something that you're writing very much, right? Every word. And then after that, there's another level of objectification process that happens with turning it into the object of film. And I think in doing that, it's like some of that is, of course, going to happen through collaboration with your actors and, of course, your department heads and everyone. But also, you know, I think that Nora is as much a creation of Greta as it is someone that I wrote too. So amazing. I think that it is this amazing alchemy of the work you're doing with your actor with anything else. Yeah.
Let's talk about the casting, and I want to be absolutely sure I get the pronunciation right for this.
Yeah.
Is it Teo-Yu?
Teo-Yu,
and he played Hae-sung.
Hae-sung.
Thank you. Oh, it sounds so beautiful when you say it. It sounds ridiculous when I do. How did you come across his work? He had such a gentle, you know, like a stillness to him, which was kind of magical, but also quite an intensity to him. Yeah. How did you come across him?
Well, I think it was just a pretty extensive audition process.
Yeah.
So we auditioned a lot of people for that role, and then I again, he walks into the Zoom meeting, and then you just have a feeling, and then of course you're testing it, because also he has to play somebody who is an an engineer.
Yeah,
right? So
true
it's
that.
like, so you're always trying to figure out what is the right, what is, if they're going to be able to be believable as that. And so much of the process is, we worked together for like 3 hours, before I walked away from that conversation feeling like, no, I think I found my Haesong.
Yeah, and then I guess you have to put the two of them together. Was there chemistry reads, and did you get that kind of...
Actually, I didn't do a chemistry with them because to me it was pretty obvious that they were going to have chemistry.
Yeah.
The chemistry read that I did do was actually with the children.
Oh,
So the little Haesong and then the little Nora, the two kids in the movie, they actually needed to have such powerful chemistry because their chemistry is a thing that carries the whole story
film,
through in a
true.
way. And of course, they don't have that many lines to really work through in a way that the adults do. So it really was something where it felt really important to do a chemistry with them. And the actor who ended up being cast for Haesong did such a beautiful piece of ad-lib that I asked him to do, where I asked him, the little Haesong, to basically ask his friend, little Nora, to ask her to stay in Korea. And he did such a beautiful piece of ad-lib that it made the little girl cry. And then afterwards, I feel like I remember again walking away feeling like, yeah, he's going to be the right guy, right kid for the young Haesong.
Oh, that must be magical when something like that happens in
Oh,
front of
yeah.
your very eyes.
Oh, it's totally amazing. And then you just know you're right,
How was it? You're obviously shooting in various 3 different locations, and being in Korea. Was it in Seoul? Where exactly did you
Seoul.
shoot? Yeah. What a magical city. I've only had the joy of being there once,
Yeah,
but it's
amazing.
glorious there.
It's amazing.
How would you compare all the 3 chapters when it comes to the process of making the film?
Well, I think that some of the making of the film really felt like the film itself, because I felt sometimes like I was first of all, of course, translating between these 2 worlds, and I don't just mean in terms of language, just sometimes through culture.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm learning on my first movie 2 filmmaking cultures too, because of course Seoul has a different filmmaking culture than New York does. So and
a strong one too.
Right, of course, exactly, and they both have such a strong personality when it comes to how they make movies. So it was amazing to sort of feel the completely different 2 processes clashing into each other, which I think really speaks to what the movie is about as well.
Yeah. Is it true that you kept the 2 actors apart? So was that your intention from the beginning, and you really thought it was a big part of the process to make it work?
Yeah, well, I feel like the character of Haesong and the character of Arthur, I wanted to keep them apart because I feel like I liked the idea of these 2 guys who had an idea of the other person.
Yeah.
And then to be faced with the reality of the other person, and then for those 2 things to sort of, crash and explode. And I think that's really what was behind it, which is that I wanted them to both develop a language and develop a chemistry and the world with the actresses playing Nora separately from each other, so that when they are crashing into each other, it was going to be very dramatic in that way. And I think that that's why I really wanted to keep them apart, and I think it was pretty helpful for them too, because they didn't have to think about, oh my God, well, how is she with him? So all they could do is they could really just conceive of what it is, and that's what the movie is too. The movie is about the idea of another person versus the reality of another person too, because the movie is about Haesong, who the idea of Nora is still that little 12-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And then also him having to come to face the grown woman that she has become, who is very different, and also the same. And I think that's really also the contradiction of this movie. Like I was saying earlier, it's like we're all adults, and then of course there's a kid in us too.
There is, and we are all a sum of all of our parts.
Yeah.
I have to thank you because I immediately went onto YouTube and watched the Marina Abramovich.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly. And it was, I just sat at my dining table just in absolute floods of tears. It was so powerful.
Yeah.
And I just thought, because with all the extra noise and knowing how busy MoMA gets and the idea of performative kind of art in that way, it feels so distracting. And even if I knew with the title what was going to happen, when it did, it was so stunning. And I think about how when they were adults and they met again and they just stood and looked at each other. It's not often as humans we do that. We allow all the performative hellos and greetings, and it's not very often that people, well, we're doing it, but in a sense we're talking and exchanging ideas and having a conversation. But how often with someone that maybe we love do we sit and just look through the windows of their soul? It felt like it just, when I watched it, that would be a part of a foundation of how your storytelling worked, was really quite powerful.
Thank you. I think a part of it is like you're having to behold something that you don't have much language for, because I think this is really connected to the part of it that is epic, right? Because it is something that is going to be extraordinary. And it's just happening in this park where ordinary people just like walk around. It's ordinary, and in some ways you would say that like it's a very ordinary thing that is happening to ordinary people. So it's very easy to just walk by it and not really think of it as something that feels as massive. But they're looking at each other like they're watching a fire, like they're looking into them. And I think a part of it is beholding this, the contradiction that they feel. And I think that's why there's a moment of flashback too, of them seeing them as children, which is that like you see this person, and to you this person is of course still 12, but also you're seeing this person as a fully someone in their 30s. So what is the contradiction about? And I think that there's no language that can really describe that. What could you possibly say except just like, whoa, like, hi.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And also, hearing you speak, it's also, how people say a smile is universal regardless of the language. So is that.
Yeah.
That way of communicating with another human being, it doesn't matter what language you're speaking or what country you're standing in. And I suppose that's how it felt. And there was such courageousness in a way, even though it wasn't an act of bravery. I don't mean it like that, but that you actually are prepared to just have that conversation.
Of course. And I think it's really scary for both of them,
Yeah, man.
Of course. And then when it actually happens, and I think that it is just completely transporting too. And it's like for a moment there you don't hear any sound of the city either, So that was important to me, that it's like the sound of the city will disappear. But then when she leans in to hug him and for them to have a physical contact, then suddenly the city becomes tangible again.
Yeah, alive again.
Right, and then they're suddenly in a public place again, And I think there are moments in our lives where suddenly the whole thing falls away, And it's as though we're sort of existing outside of time and space, which we're usually cruelly, in a very cruel way, tied to.
We are.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
You're amazing. I'm just trying to think of what else I need to do here. I could sit and talk to you all day, but I'm not allowed.
You could do it all day.
Yeah. You're here in New Zealand for the film festival. Amazing.
Yeah.
With Q&As and bits and pieces. Our interview will air when it releases in cinemas, which is great because it will roll out all around the country and everyone can go and see it. I mentioned obviously that critics are absolutely loving this film, and being a nominee in Berlin must have been an amazing feeling. Were you ever expecting this kind of reaction, these accolades for you? I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, not expecting, but how's it made you feel?
Well, I think that, I remember, so this movie had a world premiere at Sundance Film Festival this January.
Yep.
And I remember that was the time that I was the most nervous, where I was sort of waiting for this movie to be seen in front of a live audience for the first time. And I knew that it was until it was going to be seen by that audience, it was a bit of a secret that I had with people who made the movie with me. And I think that what I was really nervous about really was that realizing that now this is going to be in the hands of the world, right? Not the world's going to, right? So, and whether the world loves it and and wants it in their lives the way that I always hope is always a question, right? Because you always hope that it's going to be accepted and loved, and as you sort of like have to let go of the control of like because making the movie is there's so much control that has to happen in making a movie because right, and then you're very much a leader, and of course then you're an editor, and then you're so much of it is happening in so within your capacity, right? And then of course in control, in my control, and then of course you're sort of letting it go, and then letting it be completely out of my control, and letting it be a part of the world in that way. And I felt both things, which is that like, oh, I'm so excited! I can't wait for this to be out of my control and in the world, and also the feeling that, wow, I'm never gonna feel this again, where this feels like still a secret. It's just a thing that I have, It's going to no longer be that. So I think this is a long way of saying it's like, I think it's been amazing and you hope for the best always, but then it's been amazing to see that it's like, it is better than, what you could have hoped for.
I think you've perfectly described the addiction of filmmakers.
Oh, yeah.
Right there and then. It's no
Of
longer
course.
it's gone, it's out there, it's going to grow into something else.
Of course.
And then you'll sit there and go, ooh,
Yeah.
what
Exactly.
next?
Well, exactly. And I think it's so alive in the audiences.
Yeah.
Because I think that what I've really loved more than anything is that the audience is going to have been approaching the film, or like letting it sort of be. They've been letting it be a part of their lives in a very real way, or like bringing their own experiences or their own stories of love and life into the movie, and they see themselves reflected in it, or they see themselves really connected to the core of it. And I think that, and then what that also means is that it's going to feel different for every audience member, right? Because it's like, and also I think it's very different for someone who is 17 who's watching it than someone who's 70, right? Because you just have been in different parts of different phases in your life. And I think to me, I'm like, that's been the most amazing thing, which is just seeing it be alive in the audience, but also be alive very differently and very connected to their own lives,
So you release a film in Park City, and then you find yourself on it. I mean, it's only August. It's been like incredible. You've been around the film festivals and in Berlin, and now here in Aotearoa, New Zealand as well. So that's you'll be clocking up some air miles.
So excited!
Getting to share the film with so many people. It's awesome. I will ask then. I mean, obviously you're in this zone and have released Past Lives out into the world. What else? What next for you? What's the next step you're going to take?
I just want to keep making movies.
Yay!
Yeah.
That's the perfect answer.
Thank you.